All right. Well, it looks like we have a good audience for today. There might be some more people that trickle in, but in the interest of time, I would like to welcome all of you to the 2024 collaborative series of webinars between PXP, that's for patients by patients, and the Patient Engagement Research Ambassadors at CIHR IMHA. That stands for the Canadian Institutes of Health Research Institute of Musculoskeletal Health. This is the second in a four-part webinar series taking place in 2024. Some of you may have attended the first PXP conference in 2023. I'm happy to say that planning is underway for the next conference to take place in fall 2024. In the meantime, this series of webinars is designed to build skills and capacity for those in the patient engagement research space in between conferences. My name is Kimberly Strain. I'm a patient partner, and I am happy to be your host for today. I'm joined in the background by Don Richards and Hedy Mulhall, who'll be sharing various links in the chat as we go along. We also have Rabab Kara on our tech support to help make things run smoothly. Thank you to these individuals. We couldn't do it without you. Today's webinar, Motivations for Being a Patient Partner in Research, is for and by patients. Of course, we welcome anyone with an interest in this subject to listen and learn. The topic was designed by patient partners based on their own experiences. In a few moments, I'll introduce you to three diverse panelists, which you can see on your screen right now. Together, we'll have a conversation, we'll learn more about their motivations as patient partners, and we'll take some of your questions. Now, one note I'd like to make around the language used for this topic. You may have heard various terms such as patient, patient partner, consumer, patient engagement, patient and public involvement. The terms may vary depending on where you're located geographically or even your own personal preferences. Regardless of the terms being used, know that we are all here to talk about the same thing, and that is the lived and living experiences of patients working in partnership with researchers. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the land I'm zooming in from today, and that is the traditional unceded territory of the Stolo people, in particular the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations, otherwise known as Abbotsford, British Columbia. I am grateful and I am privileged to be a guest on these lands. I realize that many of you are joining from across Canada or even across the world. So I welcome you to put in the chat where you're joining from in your traditional lands. We'll also put a link in there so you can learn more about land acknowledgements. Now, some technical notes before we get going. As you probably noticed, this webinar is being recorded. When the recording is ready, it will be placed on the PXP website. If you need closed captioning, you can select the CC button at the bottom of your screen. There is an arrow there if you'd like to select a language of your choice. Two features of Zoom I'd like to point out are the chat feature and the Q&A button. Use the chat to share any resources, comments, or maybe something about yourself. Anything put in the chat will be anonymously summarized and will be placed on the PXP website along with the video. Because the chat moves really fast, we won't be monitoring it for questions. Instead, we ask that you use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. If using that button poses some kind of barrier for you, you are welcome to ask your question verbally. We're able to take a few verbal questions. All you have to do is press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. We'll unmute you and you can ask your question at a good time. Please note that you don't have to have your video on. when you're asking your questions, but your name and voice will become part of the recording. And finally, if you are on social media, use our hashtag PXP24. And thank you to the webinar supporter, CIHR IMHA. So with that, let's get started. So welcome to our panelists. I am so excited to get into this conversation with all of you. And to begin, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're zooming in from, and briefly anything you're comfortable sharing about yourself to let our audience know you a bit better. How about we start with Larry, followed by Anna, and then Therese. So Larry, over to you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'm delighted to be here today, all the way from Cloverdale, BC, which is about 40 kilometers away from downtown Vancouver. So let's turn back the clock all the way to the mid-90s. I was a happy guy. I had a loving family, a nice home, a good dog, a good job, and a dog that doted on me. I was healthy too. I didn't even need a family doctor. Sure, I was accident prone, and I sheepishly accepted all the good-natured ribbing each time I showed up with yet another broken bone. Besides, after a few months, the bones would heal and the pain would be gone. That's normal, right? But the broken bones kept coming. Each time I suffered blinding pain. I endured lengthy periods of convalescence, watched helplessly while others performed even the simplest of tasks for me. I was unable to work and reluctant to socialize for weeks at a time. I broke 8 bones in 3 different provinces and on two different continents. I was treated for those fractures in 7 different hospitals. It never occurred to me, nor did it occur to the various healthcare professionals who treated me in emergency rooms, x-ray clinics, cast clinics, and doctors' offices, that the fractures were somehow connected to my bone health. And although the fractures received excellent treatment, the underlying cause of the broken bones went unnoticed and untreated. The alarm bell finally went off when I had my 8th fracture, and my wife's doctor told her to tell me to get my bones tested. I was devastated by the diagnosis that followed. Osteoporosis? How could that be? I was a 48-year-old man, not a frail elderly lady. I stressed, I panicked, and I set out on a never-ending quest to answer 2 questions. Why wasn't I diagnosed much sooner? And how could I end the cycle of recurrent fractures? So the business case for becoming an engaged patient partner was off to a pretty good start.
Thanks, Larry. Anna, how about you go?
Thanks, Kimberly. So I'm Anna. I am a Desi queer disabled person. I live with ankylosing spondylitis and fibromyalgia, along with a couple different mental illnesses. And I'm also a writer and poet, an advocate for disability and mental health. Um, I've experienced chronic pain and fatigue since I was a child with no answers. I went to the doctors frequently, and they often just told me it's growing pains or it's anxiety. I would never get any clear answers. And then finally, at 20 years old, I was diagnosed, and for over a year and a half, I was really confused and didn't understand my diagnosis. And finally, I found some other advocates on social media who were sharing their experience, some with the same conditions as I. And I realized that, there wasn't a lot of representation. It was mostly a lot of white people that I was seeing who were sharing their story, and I didn't feel represented. And I thought, maybe I could share my story and my experience as a young person living with chronic pain. And I started sharing my journey on social media, and that's kind of how my advocacy started and how I got involved as a patient partner. So that's just a little about me.
Thanks, Anna. Therese?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm glad to be here today. I live in Toronto, Ontario. I'm a person with lived experience since my early teens of chronic pain, mental health, substance use, homelessness, and still live with that pain today. I'm a patient partner with the Chronic Pain Network. I'm a board member with the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance, and I have a part-time job as an e-commerce manager for a subscription coffee company. And like I say, I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, everyone. If I really enjoyed coffee, I now know where to go, right, Therese? I would come over to you and ask you for coffee. I'd like to move us into more of your experiences and some of the motivations that each of you have had being a patient partner involved in research. Now, motivations can mean different things to different people. It can be to fulfill some kind of need. There might be a desire to make a change based on your own experiences. There might be rewards or benefits that are personally meaningful to you, or you just might find a sense of meaning from being involved. So my question to all of you is, when you first started as a patient partner, either in research or in patient engagement, what was it that pulled you into this world? What made you say, hey, I'll sign up for that? And do I have any eager volunteers who'd like to go for that question?
I'll start.
Therese, sure. Oh, I think I saw Therese's hand, so I'll go Therese and then Larry, if that's all right.
Perfect.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I started my my journey in a rather unexpected place. It was at the gym. I happened to be talking to a workout buddy of mine who is a researcher, and just happened to mention that I lived with pain. Well, she thought that I may want to get involved. So next thing I was signed up to everything and everyone. And that's when I was introduced to the Chronic Pain Network. I was a little confused in the beginning. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. I kind of think, when looking back on it, that it was kind of for selfish reasons. Maybe I wanted answers for myself. But I think the more I stuck around, the more I asked questions, immersed myself in the world of meeting other patient partners, and I discovered that the profound impact that patient partners can have on shaping research and healthcare practices. I met some of the most hardworking patient partners and some of the greatest minds in research, and I just felt that maybe I could continue on this journey. And like I say, I asked questions. I found myself drawn to the idea of using my experiences to contribute to the greater good. And I noticed where there were gaps in the system, and sometimes I felt I didn't fit in with other people. I felt that they were maybe more educated than I. They were established. I heard someone say one time, if it wasn't for the fact that they were financially comfortable, they wouldn't be able to do this. And I didn't relate to that. I had experienced, I still live. Basically, I'm having a hard time coming out of poverty. I also a caregiver to my husband, and I didn't relate to them. But what I did find out were the gaps were in marginalized groups, and that's where I have focused my energy. So that's where I have found my little niche.
Thanks, Therese. And just very interesting that of all the places to get involved in patient engagement, you mentioned a gym. So I think for the researchers that are out there, it's really important to think about meeting people where they are, so you can find people that maybe they wouldn't have known about research, sort of like Therese might have not known if someone hadn't dropped into the gym that day. So Larry, over to you.
Hey, I first became involved when I agreed to participate in a small focus group. This focus group was helping to create a pamphlet for patients treated at a gas clinic in one of our local hospitals. The researchers were respectful. They made us all feel at home. They asked questions. They listened carefully to our answers, and they thanked us profusely. And my comments helped shape the final outcome, a fact sheet to give patients what they need to know about their fracture risk and how to care for their casts. It was a small but momentous project for me. The hook was in, the hook was set. This patient had been engaged for the first time. Indeed, that one tiny project opened the door to me becoming a patient partner for more than a dozen years with the same innovative leader from that focus group on a continuous string of much bigger research initiatives. It also helped me to seek out other opportunities to engage in research across Canada. But with each new opportunity, I ask myself, will I learn something? Will I be able to meaningfully engage? And will my contributions make a difference? In the beginning, I thought it was all about sharing my lived experience with broken bones and osteoporosis. But I gradually realized that I had much more to offer than my patient expertise. As a 35-year bureaucrat, I had accumulated experience leading and building diverse teams, a basic understanding of knowledge translation, an enthusiasm for interest-based negotiations, and experience working with senior officials at all levels of government. These all contributed to my sense of self-worth and confidence, allowing me to give more and to get more out of each new opportunity.
I really love what you mentioned, Larry. I was making notes as you spoke about when you approach an opportunity, it's what will I learn, what is meaningful, and will it make a difference? And I think those are super important things for patients to keep in mind, and maybe it can even inspire their own motivations when they're looking at the different opportunities to participate. So thank you for sharing that. I've written it down right beside me. Anna, how about your thoughts?
I got involved in patient engagement through social media, actually. So through my advocacy on social media, I connected with Take a Pain Check Foundation, which is an organization for youth with rheumatic disease. And this was especially meaningful for me because there aren't a lot of spaces for youth who have rheumatic conditions. So being able to connect with other people was really meaningful for me. And through that organization, I got connected to the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance. And I was introduced to several research opportunities and to a patient partner training program where I could learn more about what being a patient partner is, what patient engagement in research looks like. And that was really helpful for me because I knew that I wanted to be able to give back and make other people's diagnosis journey a lot shorter than mine was, because I spent over like 5 to 7 years just constantly going to doctors. And I know that's true for a lot of people. And it it sucks that it's like that, and it shouldn't be like that. And if there's anything I can do to lend back to that so that people can get diagnosis and treatment earlier, that's kind of the mindset I was going into this with. So that's kind of where I was coming from. And I think that's still how I largely feel. But yeah, it was through social media that I kind of got connected to all of these things.
Thanks, Anna. So really hearing that, as a youth, it took a really long time for you to have that diagnosis, and you had that desire where you want to shorten that for other people and improve that system for people like yourself so they can get diagnosed in a more timely manner. At this point, I realized that we had a couple of audience submitted questions beforehand, so I think I'll sneak one in here now. And I'll just remind our audience members, if you would like to ask a question, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So this one that came in was, did you have a mentor or trusted advisor to help you navigate the process to become a patient partner? So I'm wondering if any of the three of you might be able to speak to that. Larry, go for
I'll
it.
speak to it. But it would be almost impossible to pick out a single individual. I had many mentors, both other patients like myself who, told me their stories and brought me into the fold to understand what it means to be a patient and how we could work together and how we could make a difference. At the same time, there were quite a number of researchers who did the same kind of thing for me, taught me a lot about research, how I could contribute, and how to get the best out of my experience. So there was no one individual. There were many individuals, and I think I've been very fortunate that way, because some of those people, as I mentioned earlier, that I met right from almost day one are still around today, giving me advice and listening to what I have to say.
Thanks, Larry. So having mentors on both sides, from the researcher and the patient partner, can be really helpful for people to help navigate this space. Therese or Anna, have you had any experience with mentors? I saw you unmute, Therese, so go ahead.
The first, no, I didn't. Actually, the first kind of lesson, I guess, on what patient engagement was about was an in-person course that was put on by the Chronic Pain Network. And it was with, I think, the diabetes, another one of the small groups anyways. And we met in person, and that's when I was introduced to Dawn. And I think Dawn has been my main mentor. Still is today. I don't know where I'd be without Dawn, to be quite honest, as many of us know. But yeah, I'm glad that now when patient partners come on board, there is the opportunity for mentoring. Also, they have the IMHA modules that are online that people can access and take. I'm really glad about that, because I didn't know what I was doing when I went to meet the basic scientist on my first project. He didn't know what it was about. Neither of us knew what it was about, but we just met anyways. And I liked that interaction, but that wasn't research. So, I'm glad it's changed anyways.
Thanks, Therese. So having options now that weren't there when you first started, super helpful for the newer people that are coming through, so they have some kind of roadmap to where they're going as a patient partner. And Anna, did you have any comments you wanted to share?
I did have some mentors, both like patients and like researchers alike. For me, it started initially with being connected to the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance. So Lori Prue and Don Richards, both, I consider them mentors because they really helped me get connected to projects and researchers and also to resources to help me learn what being a patient partner means because like Therese said, like when you get into it at first, it can be overwhelming because you don't know what's going on. And sometimes the people around you don't know what's going on either, and everyone's just trying to figure it out. And the IMHA modules really help as well. So I think just like IMHA as an institution was very supportive as well. But um it as someone who's like newer to patient partner, I feel like there are more supports to kind of foray into this. And those were some of mine.
Thanks, Anna. So it's really interesting to hear from the three of you in different perspectives, and someone newer like Anna, and already those modules are there, and you can use them and learn more about being a patient partner in research. And Therese, knowing that if there's people coming after you, you know where to direct them for more help, and just Larry having different kind of mentors from the research and from the patient partner world, and not just having one, and having many different people that have been with you throughout your journey. And that sort of segues into our next question. We've kind of alluded to this a bit, but I'm aware that the three of you have been involved in this world for different amounts of time. And Anna, as you mentioned, you're newer to this world. And for Larry and Therese, I know you have been involved in this for many, many years. So I'm wondering, and I think this was spoken a little bit about this when we got going, but I'm hoping we can expand on it. What have your motivations looked like over time? So if you compare your motivations now to when you first started, what has changed? And Larry or Therese, feel free to unmute.
I'll go. So first I have to start with a full disclosure that my motivation was pretty selfish at the beginning. I was in it to find out what could be done to fix me. It was all about Larry. I know that that's changed, and I hope others see it that way too. But let's talk about a few of my motivation moments, I call them. So when I visualize the key milestones on my motivation journey, I first see a snapshot of my grandchildren sitting on the lawn in front of the sold sign at our Ottawa house, all smiles and excited to be going to a new adventure, to a new home thousands of miles away on the West Coast. Little did we know that a few weeks later, that adventure would take an unexpected turn when another broken bone finally revealed my diagnosis of osteoporosis. So there were more questions that needed to be answered. What do you mean I could break my back lifting my grandson into the van? What role does genetics play in osteoporosis? Have I passed along my faulty genes? What can I do to prevent my grandchildren from suffering a similar fate? So that was a big motivation for me at that time. All of these questions added a new sense of urgency for me to find some credible answers. The second snapshot is a group photo of a research team taken just a couple of days ago. We were meeting to evaluate the progress on a policy research project funded by CIHR. The meeting began with a direction to participants to write down a single word that describes how we feel about this team now that we're at the halfway point in the project. Two words rose to the top of the collated answers. The first was inspiration, followed closely by diversity. And what a timely reminder that was of what motivates me to engage now, the opportunity to work with diverse teams and inspire and support one another. So how have my motivations changed over the years? The biggest changes that came with me admitting to myself that it wasn't just about me. Instead, it was, what about us? I wasn't the only one grappling with the challenges and all the questions about chronic disease. I came to realize that by engaging, collaborating, and contributing to the work of others, I would be more likely to find the answers myself and so many others craved. Seeing the results of meaningful patient engagement and knowing that I can make a difference has also motivated me to take on more.
Thanks, Larry. So just really hearing from the beginning, it was more about, focusing on you. And as you said, you felt kind of selfish because it was about you. And then now shifting to more of a global picture. So what about us? And it's really interesting to see how that shift has occurred in your own experiences. Therese, any comments that you'd like to share?
Yes, similar to Larry, I think that initially I had come in to this because I had questions, actually probably feeling quite, sorry for myself. Why me? Why did I end up with pain? And why was I addicted to everything that came in my path, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that shifted when the more I got involved, the more I think I did mention about I would see the gaps. I would see things that I didn't like around with my friends. I saw them. I saw the difference between people who had a stable job and a good health care plan, and people who didn't, and how the people who had the health care plan were getting better quicker, and the people who didn't were denied treatments. And I think that I wanted to work towards changing that. I wanted to see more equity for people in who were less fortunate, and it became more about what can I give back rather than what can I take from this. I mean, I did take a lot from it. I blossomed as a person. I became more confident in myself, but I needed to use my voice for the greater good, and it didn't, and I didn't matter so much anymore. Yeah, not that I shut myself out and denied myself of anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I stopped feeling sorry for myself, basically.
So it's almost your stories sound a bit similar in how you have shifted that motivation to the focus on you, to the focus on, like you said, the greater good, and how you can help more people, and noticing those gaps, and saying we need to look at these areas. Anna, as someone that is newer to this world, I'm wondering, in terms of motivations, what keeps you coming back?
There's a couple things. So part of it is that I felt really alone when I was first diagnosed, and I felt like I didn't have answers and didn't know where to go, and I didn't know other people who have the same conditions or who have chronic illnesses or chronic pain. And that was a very isolating experience. So part of my motivation to get involved in research was to meet more people, to kind of get in that space. It was that, yearning for community. But on the flip side of that, I also don't want other people to feel that same sense of isolation and aloneness. And if I can put myself out there and be someone who is approachable, then maybe someone else wouldn't feel as alone. when they're diagnosed or when they're looking for answers, even if it's just support. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. But another thing that really motivates me and like is persistent for me is that I think representation is so important. And especially the concept of intersectionality that, you know, there are so many different identities and aspects to us, and they all intersect and are interrelated. And I know that I bring a lot of things to the table. I'm a person of color. I'm a first generation person. I'm queer. I I'm disabled. I use mobility aids. There's a lot of things, and I know others have these as well. And I just think it's important for people to feel represented. And if I can be in research and I can be like a representative for someone, it's kind of playing off that desire of I don't want people to feel alone and not represented. So that's kind of my motivation. And I did get involved in research in 2022. So it is recent, and that's still what's kind of pushing me. And I am curious to see how it will evolve for me over time, but I don't see myself ever not wanting to do this. I think I just like this desire for people to not feel alone and to feel represented. I think this will continue to push me.
Yeah, it sounds like you've used all of your experiences and you're turning it around. And I can hear the passion in your voice where you don't want people to be alone like you were. You don't want people to have that kind of experience. And you want to see people that maybe look like you who are in research. And being that person out there shows other people that they can participate in research too. And I think that is so important. Anna, you mentioned kind of the community that comes from being involved in this. And I'm wondering, Therese and Larry, since you've been involved in this for a bit longer, can you say anything about sense of community or connection that you've had in this work?
I'll go. Yes, we were very fortunate during the pandemic to the Chronic Pain Network give us a Zoom to have check-ins with the other patient partners involved in the Chronic Pain Network. And that's where we built our community. We built relationships there that have bonded, and we bonded over research initially, and then we got down to brass tacks, how are you really feeling? What can I do? And I have a whole community. I went to the Canadian Pain Society conference last week, and I'm still tired because I realized how many people I know and I met there, and it was great to see them. It's exhausting, but it's great. I really feel a part of something, and with the people that I know that I have met. I mean, I'm not fully. I've always felt like a square peg in a round hole, and I find it kind of hard to fit in. But with the community that I've built, I trust these people, and they're part of my life. They're part of my thoughts every day, and yeah, and it's all because we have one thing in common, and that's we want to make a difference. So.
Thanks, Therese. Larry?
Yeah, I know when I think of it, the friendships, the connections I've made, many of them are kind of outside the formal patient engagement sphere. So over the years, I've met many through through COPAN, the Canadian Osteoporosis Patient Network. And they're friendships, but they're also colleagues in the same fight to eliminate fragility fractures here in Canada. So we connect kind of business-like on many issues, and we connect just as well on issues that are less about getting better medication access and things like that. One of the most enjoyable things we've done is having an informal Friday afternoon where we connect by Zoom or by phone and just have a chat about things that are of interest to us. And we have a swear jar. If you mentioned COPAN or anything to do with work, you have to donate to that swear jar. So it's getting to know each other kind of outside that business-like environment. And I think that's really helped to kind of create more of a collegial and collaborative network of individuals, albeit very informally.
Yeah, I love that idea about the swear jar there. You mention work, then you have to put something in there, but building those personal connections with people and, finding out more about them as people and developing that relationship is so important, and especially in patient-oriented research where you're working with people. I want to go to a question that was pre-submitted to us. And that one is there a project that stands out for you where you really felt like you were making a difference and an impact? Does anyone have one they'd like to share?
Well, I can start. Most recently, I was engaged as a patient partner on the steering committee putting together the update of the clinical practice guidelines for osteoporosis. I was the lone patient on the steering committee, but we had a whole team of other patient partners, essentially from COPAN, but not exclusively, who participated in all of the workings of the various working groups, or 4 or 5 working groups, and the steering committee. So we had 5 or 6 patients who participated on a regular basis through a period of 5 years. And some of the things that we did as a patient group that really helped inform the work was to create and hold a survey that went out to all of COPAN members. We got 1,100 responses back from individuals who wanted to comment on what they needed to see in a new set of guidelines. And it was a bit of a surprise, but a real pleasure to see how each of those working groups took the findings of that survey to heart, to answer the questions, to make recommendations that acknowledged that this is what patients want. So in that one instance, I can't think of a better example of a project that resulted in something as significant as clinical practice guidelines that have been truly informed by patients' wants and needs.
Yeah, that is amazing to see that influence that you can have as a patient partner. Therese or Anna, do you have any projects you'd like to share very briefly? No? Yes? Oh, I saw you both unmuted at the same time. Anna, go ahead.
So there's this one project that I'm a part of that looks at representation in rheumatology research. And again, like that's something that's very important to me. So when I was contacted about this, I was like, oh my God, yes, I want to be involved, because it looks at it from both perspectives, not just like patients who are part of studies, but it also looks at researchers to address that bias. If there isn't representation among researchers as well, how can they adequately address the needs of diverse populations and care for them? And that's something that I always thought and even spoke of a bit in my advocacy on social media, but I never had the more, professional words for it. And I didn't really have the means or connections to talk about it. But then being involved in the study, I think it's really important to talk about it. And we're learning a lot about um, implicit biases and stuff that some researchers bring to the table, and how it can be difficult to get some more diverse groups involved in research. And I think ultimately that is the goal, just more representation all across the board. So that's something that I'm involved in that is really meaningful for me, because I did not expect to become so involved in a project that is exactly about what I'm so passionate about.
Thanks, Anna. And Therese?
Um, I can't really think of anything right now.
That's totally fine.
I've just gone blank.
Lots to think about. I see a question in the chat, which I'll just see if we can quickly answer here. I often feel inadequate in terms of what I might be able to offer in terms of research. Did any of you feel this way when you first started engaging as a patient partner in research? Maybe Therese, I see you're nodding your head. Maybe this one's for you.
Yeah, I think I'm a former nurse. It's been a while since I have practiced, but I am a former nurse, and I thought that when I got into patient engagement and research, that I should use all the medical knowledge that I learned as a nurse to share. And I think that I changed that around when I realized that when I was nursing, things were different, that things have changed now. But also I found that my experience helped more than anything else, that I was a face to what their research was about, and that I should stick to how I feel now and not what I did or didn't know about research, because I don't know much about it. I just unlike only what I picked up along the way, but on a personal level, I don't know. I just lend my experience. That's all I can do, and it takes the pressure off. We're only experts on who we are and what we're going through. We're not experts on absolutely everything. So that eased the pressure for me.
Anna, I saw you nodding your head to some of that. Does some of that resonate for you?
It really does, because sometimes as a part of research teams, I get a bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't have, the qualifications to be here, or I'm not affiliated with a research body or like a university or something, and I feel out of place. But then I just think back to like the disability rights movement and the slogan of nothing about us without us. And I think that where where would this research be without us patient partners lending our experience? Because, these are ideas and theories, and we're the ones who lend like credence to them through our lived experience. And I think that's really valuable. And it's hard to remember that sometimes, because, you get caught up in all the qualifications, all the letters after someone's name, and it can feel like, maybe I don't belong here. But I just think the experience we bring, that it's so singular. Every single person experiences their conditions and life differently, and everyone has something to offer. And I think just research benefits from all these perspectives, and I just try to keep that in mind.
Yeah, so just really recognizing that it's your lived experience, and you don't have to, like Therese said, you don't have to worry about all that other stuff, to take that pressure off of yourself and realize that yes, you do belong at that table. Larry, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add?
Well, I was going to say it can be intimidating, but the thing I remind myself of when I go into a situation like that, where you know, my training, my background is not on a level equal to the others in the room. I think I've this a phrase I keep using, and that's that I am an expert. I'm an expert in me, so nobody else knows me as well as I know me, except my wife, of course. But that it's if you go into any of these situations with that in mind, you are on a different plane. At the same time, though, there is merit in finding out more about what the research is all about. So, you know, in my time, I've had to learn, didn't have to, but I like to learn about grade. I like to learn about in vivo and a bunch of other things that initially the acronyms just, you know, rolled off my back. I had no idea what they were talking about, but having the opportunity to learn a little bit more about some of the science behind the research was one of the best things about being able to participate as a patient.
Yeah, you bring up a really great point, and as patient partners, we have opportunities to learn along the way, and I think that can have an impact on people's motivations for being involved too. If you really want to learn, you can learn as much or as little as you want. I'm going to move us into our next question, and Anna, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's somewhat of an elephant in the room when it comes to the types of patient partners that are involved. Simply put, there is a huge lack of diversity when it comes to things like race, education, gender identity, income levels. This was shown recently in a Canadian patient partner survey. So, considering this lack of diversity, how has that impacted your motivations?
It's frustrating to deal with at times. Sometimes it's a little disheartening because I'm like, I thought we'd made more change than this at this point. I thought we moved further from this, but maybe I will be a part of the change. That's how I kind of think about it. Maybe just coming back to representation, like if I can make even one person in the room feel represented in one way or another, that's the approach I'd like to take. I do feel like overall there is a bit more representation than I expected because I had very low expectations going in, if I'll be honest. Um, but I still think there's a lot of room to improve. And the biggest thing for me is that maybe I've just been fortunate with the researchers I've been connected with and the organizations I've been connected with, but it seems like there's more of a genuine desire to want to reach more diverse people, to engage more diverse people. And I think that sort of like genuine and real desire really shines through. And I hope that, more diverse groups will get involved in research because I think that just overall makes research better as well. Um, but it can be frustrating at times, and I can even understand why some prospective patient partners might see lack of diversity and, be hesitant to join because of it. But I think there's room for improvement, and I think that slowly but surely we're on our way there.
Therese, I want to maybe go over to you because I know you mentioned in the beginning that a lot of the people that were involved had, I guess, an economic privilege, and you didn't have that privilege. So I wonder if you could maybe just expand on that a bit.
Yeah, I think that that's really when I heard, when I heard that, I thought maybe I don't belong here. But then I turned that around and thought, no, we all belong here. And I'd heard about diversity, and I was a little bit afraid about bringing people of different classes and color and ethnicity and everything just because it looked good. And I didn't want that to happen. And I think that when, like Anna said, we're not there yet, but the desire to want to have everybody at the table is there. And until it is, then people like myself, I'm not from a privileged background. I've struggled with most things all my life, and I need to be a voice for the people that can't be here until they can come, until we can figure out, or I don't know if it's even up to us, but until they do come, until it's easier for them to come. And yeah, I think we just have to be true to ourselves. We know what we'd like to see, more diversity, but don't bring it on just for the sake of making it look good on just as tokens. That's what I don't want.
Exactly. So not having the window dressing for the illusion that we're doing diversity, but the genuine interest. And from both Anna and yourself, I'm hearing kind of almost like you're trailblazing in a way, and you're wanting to be involved, to say, no, hey, I want to be involved, to show these other people that maybe have similar backgrounds to me that they too, and that we're not quite there yet in where we're going, but we're starting in the right direction. Larry, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, and I'll take a slightly different approach to the question. And I know the people that know me on the line are saying, here goes Larry, men and osteoporosis again. But it is an issue. There's long been a perception that osteoporosis is a disease that only affects frail, elderly women. But in fact, osteoporosis and the fractures that it causes affects both men and women. 1 in 3 Canadian women are going to suffer an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime, but 1 in 5 men are also going to suffer that same type of fracture in their lifetime. So the research was and still is focused on women, meaning that treatments, education, knowledge translation issues all follow suit, reinforcing the already well-rooted stereotype. But it's not for a lack of trying to get men involved. Men just don't participate. So efforts to counter the stereotype have been mostly unsuccessful. Our healthcare programs aren't well geared to address the issue, and men in general do very little to help the cause. They just don't get it. But more than 90% of the men who break a bone because of osteoporosis aren't assessed, diagnosed, or treated to prevent another inevitable fracture. Somebody has to speak up, and as much as possible, I try to do that, but it's difficult to get other men to engage. So, whether it's offering suggestions of how to engage men in exercise, or initiatives like Bones and Beer, and I won't go into that, because we don't have enough time for my favorite hobby horse, but educational events that draw men in to learn about osteoporosis do show some promise. The same thing applies for research or initiatives that promote exercise in men. We found here in BC that the OsteoFit program, that's a big success province-wide. The classes are offered at many locations, and I think it was up to 100 locations across BC, but I'm not sure the latest numbers. We're very well attended, always sold out, but very few men attended. And we got together with one of the local instructors and talked about, what if we do a men-only class? And we were able to fill the room, to fill the class very quickly, because men didn't want to exercise with a bunch of women, because the women would always outperform them, of course. But there are issues like that have, while they show some promise, still haven't been taken up. And as a result, the evidence, it's just not there. Whether some of these treatments that are prescribed for women have been researched using thousands of women who participate in the research studies, aren't as reliable in predicting outcomes for men, because men, for starters, don't even participate in research as subjects in osteoporosis. They do in other disease areas. So until we get more men involved from the ground up, the evidence just isn't going to be there to make conclusive recommendations on how men should be treated for osteoporosis. It's been a frustration of myself and many other men for many years who've seen the needle just barely move, in spite of good intentions by everybody being all those in the research community that would love to find ways to get more men to participate. So diversity, yes, but more singularly focused, I suppose.
Yeah, between the three of you, you have such interesting perspectives that you bring, almost, just from that, almost like an outsider perspective, where it's like, I don't really fit here, or the research isn't following, it's focused on women in Larry's case. And you're each you're, like I said, trailblazers and paving that way. And Larry, just hearing you talk about, it's mainly focused on women, and finding out a way to let men know that, this affects them as well. And often we hear in research that a lot of the research is actually done on men for different things. So it's very interesting to hear, in particular for osteoporosis, that it's the opposite. So I would like to take an audience question here. Let me see here. Have you had any examples of when your questions or knowledge changed how the research is measured or appraised? Do we have any takers who quickly like to take a stab at that one?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Kimberly?
For sure. Have you had any examples of when your questions or knowledge changed how the research is measured or appraised? I think I can maybe rephrase that and say, have you had any experiences where your involvement maybe changed the course of the research, or changed what they were looking at? Go ahead.
It's difficult to give exact examples, but yes, that was very much the case for what happened with the creation of the new guidelines for osteoporosis. What patients had to say, both through the survey and by the participation of patient partners on each of the working groups, really did influence the way the study was designed, performed, and the results that came out as a result of having patient engagement in that fashion. I think we're quite improved, quite different in some cases because of the patient participation.
While Larry is talking, I see a question actually came in here for you. Do you have some ideas how to get men more involved?
Well, it's tough, and we've tried many different things, through making posters that show men more than is typical. For instance, the approach to the exercise class by making it men only, that made a difference in getting men to participate. I mentioned bones and beer, and I'll expand on it a little bit here, but it was essentially an idea to get men into a familiar place to taste some craft beer, to enjoy some pub food, and to have a good time. And when their guard is down, hit them with the cold hard facts about osteoporosis. Started off as an awareness event, but quickly became something that actually was a fundraiser as well. Very successful. We did 10 straight years here in BC, and it's expanded to other areas across Canada as well. So it was billed as a men-only event, but we soon found out we couldn't do just that because women wanted to come and drink beer and eat pub food and have a good time as well. So that's one approach. The bait and switch approach, I guess, is what it used to be called in sales terms. That was successful, but we're looking for more than just a bones and beer or men only exercise classes to get them more fully engaged in their bone health and in all the things that we're trying to do to improve their bone health.
I love that, the idea of the bait and switch. And it reminds me of how Therese sort of got involved in meeting people where they're at, meeting people at locations that they're familiar with and helping them navigate this. I realize that our time is almost coming to a close. So I'm wondering, as I move into this next question, is thinking of your experiences dealing with your own illnesses, what has being involved in this, being a patient partner in research, what has it meant for you on a personal level? Anna, do you want to go?
Sure. On a personal level, it's really given me a sense of purpose and drive in my life because when I was first diagnosed with my conditions, I was a second year university student and I felt like I couldn't really get through school anymore. My whole life changed. And once I finally understood my diagnosis, I was like, I felt very lost. I had a loss of identity. I didn't really like trying to navigate the world as a young person with peers who aren't really going through this, and I'm having a whole different experience. I was just really confused. And being involved in research and just, community spaces like this with people who are experiencing similar things, it really gives me a sense of purpose. It makes me feel like this is something I can do. I can use my experience. I can use what I'm going through to, make things better for other people, but also to like help me as well to gain a sense of community, to connect with others, to learn more about my condition. And honestly, I've, like Therese mentioned this earlier, but it's also helped me become more confident, get better at talking to people, networking with people. I've gotten to use other skills that I've learned to, like, in these spaces, and it's really given me my sense of purpose, and it's meant so much to me because I did not expect it to be such a big encompassing thing for me. I thought this would kind of be like a side gig that I'm doing in addition to the rest of my life, but honestly, it is like the major thing that I'm doing and that I care about.
Thanks, Anna. So really, really giving a sense of meaning and providing that meaning to your life. Therese, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think it's helped me deal with all the years, where the most important thing to me was where I get my next drug, or where I sleep that night, or anything like that. Where I'd lost everybody who was near and dear to me. They'd all left, or I'd given them all away. And I think that putting all that to use in identifying with people now has helped me deal with it. It's helped me put a perspective on it. It's helped me make sense of it, why we go through these things. It's never over until it's over, and it's not over for me. I haven't finished trying to go ahead and make a difference. And if I can help one person, as one person helped me, then this is worth it. It's tough on times, but I realize that our voices make a large impact on anything that never, to anybody who's coming into patient engagement, never underestimate the impact your voice can have in this area. Don't be a wallflower. I always like to say, don't be a wallflower. Speak up, speak your truth. And yeah, so it's been great
Thanks,
for me.
Therese. Thank you. And Larry, very quickly, any words you'd like to add there?
Well, I think I've covered a lot of it already, but it's really given me the satisfaction in knowing that my voice matters and that I have been able to contribute, and that maybe, just maybe, things will be better for my grandchildren and their children.
That is a wonderful note to end on. I know I have learned a lot from the three of you, listening to you and learning from your experiences. And I hope our audience has learned as well. And for the researchers out there in the room, you've heard from people like Anna that are newer and what motivation comes from that. And for Therese and Larry, for people, how that motivation has changed. So at this point, I realize we're right at time. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to Anna, Larry, and Therese. Thank you so much for your contributions. I'd also like to thank our audience for your questions and comments in the chat. We would really appreciate it if you could fill out our survey so we can continue to create content for you. So look for that in the chat. And if you are not signed up for the PXP mailing list, please do so you can keep in touch for our next webinar, which I'm told will be in the summer on different opportunities for patient partners to engage. So for all of us over here, thank you so much for everyone for your participation. And we hope you take a moment in your day to reflect on your motivations for being involved in research. See you at the next webinar.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.